Because when the authorities record data from other places of worship, from other religions, it's noted down as hate incidences. But when it comes to Christian churches, arson, for example, is just arson. Burglary is just burglary. It doesn't have a hate attachment to it, which I find quite interesting. And we've started to get the data back. When you look at the data, it's completely raw, it's discombobulated, and it's really, really difficult to actually collate and put it together.
Hello and welcome back to the Restore Britain podcast. I'm Charlie Downs, the Campaigns Director here at Restore Britain. I'm very pleased today to be joined by Lewis Brackpool, our Director of Investigations, and Maria Bowtell, our spokeswoman and an independent councillor in Bridlington.
Yeah.
Good to be with you both. How are you doing?
And you,
Nice
very
to see
well.
you.
Yourself?
Yes, very well. So this is our Christmas special, I suppose, and we're going to talk today a little bit about Christianity, because the three of us are all Christians of different denominations, but we agree on the majority of things. And one of Restore Britain's missions from the very beginning has been a restoration of traditional Christian values in the United Kingdom. And this is something that, Maria, as you know, a lot of people have asked, what we mean by that and what that actually means in terms of how we conduct our campaigns and the issues that we choose to champion. And so we're going to go into a bit of that today, and we're going to talk about why we feel, the right in Britain, and Britain more generally, needs Christianity. And we're going to address some of the most common arguments against that. But first of all, we're going to open up, Lewis, with an investigation that you've been doing into attacks on churches. So why don't you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so as we know, Christianity worldwide, statistically, is the most persecuted religion of all time. That's just a statistical fact. Yep. And when you try to look at the data within Britain and Europe more generally, it's actually quite difficult to actually pin down some of the more raw data and to collate that together and try to understand the bigger picture of that. So one of the campaigns that we obviously went through using our whistleblowing and investigations unit is to FOI every single police force within the country, 43, to try and collate that data, whether it be attacks on churches, thefts, places of worship, etc. Because when the authorities record data from other places of worship, from other religions, it's noted down as hate incidences.
Yeah.
But with
this is mosques, synagogues,
etc., Hindu temples, everything else. But when it comes to Christian churches, arson, for example, is just arson.
Yeah.
Burglary is just burglary. It doesn't have a hate attachment to it, which I find quite interesting. And we've started to get the data back, and the data it's not really a surprise, but when you look at the data, it's completely raw, it's discombobulated, and it's really, really difficult to actually collate and put it together. So it's actually going to take quite a bit of time to actually put that together. There's no centralized system, essentially, to track anti-Christian hatred or anti-Christian attacks or anything like that. So I find that pretty... I think it's expected, but it's worrying at the same time.
It's very troubling. I think it's another manifestation of the loss of self-confidence that we as a country have experienced, because of course Christianity is literally the state religion in this country, so there is a kind of, I think it's almost like a self-hating aspect to that. The fact that we don't record attacks against our state religion as being motivated by hatred, when in fact they probably are.
The problem you have, do you know, you were talking about it, I think it was yesterday on the Lotus Eaters podcast, you were talking about how the British white man is positively discriminated against.
Absolutely.
And it's the same with the church. It's almost like that's discriminated against, and we don't want to record that problem because it's the same.
I totally agree. And you also have these stories coming out, literally today, about Christians being arrested and charged with, criminal charges for praying outside of abortion clinics, even if it's just inside their heads. And we're not, we don't have to go into the abortion issue today, but the fact that this is now something that is, first of all, the business of the state, the idea that the state should be intervening on somebody praying, which really is the most, spiritual practice that one can engage in, really. The most personal thing you can do is to say a prayer, even in your own head. The fact that the British state now sees fit to intervene on that, because people are doing it outside of abortion clinics, to me, is just another manifestation of what you were talking about, which is essentially persecution of Christians.
Well, we have what is called a buffer zone, I believe, around the centres. So what happens is you cannot protest in any way because of the sensitivity of the issue, of course. And so I believe that one of the cases, or the most famous case in the UK, is of Isabel Vaughan.
Yes.
Spruce, I believe her name is, where she stood just on a street corner, and police suddenly came and accosted her and questioned her and said, and was asking her the same questions. Are you here out of protest? And she said, I believe she said no. And then they said, are you praying? And she said, well, I might be in my head. And that was enough for her to be arrested for simply just thinking thoughts, essentially.
And it's so interesting that to me, because what does that say about how the state views prayer? Because they obviously view it as being something significant. Because if it was literally just thoughts, then, I mean, it would be ridiculous if they were to arrest somebody for that, if they were just outside an abortion centre thinking that it's bad. But actually the fact that they're praying in their head, which is a different category to just thinking, they view that as being a significant distinction, which is just really interesting to me, because we have this like liberal secular state, which nevertheless seems to understand the value of prayer and sees fit to persecute people for doing so. Which, I don't know, it's just a weird thing for me.
I think it's quite scary.
Yeah.
And it's like, where's the common sense in that from the police officers? I think that's what frustrates me. Is what law are they actually arresting her under?
Well, Clive Johnston, who's a pastor who gave a sermon outside of an abortion clinic, where he didn't actually mention abortion itself, but preached the Gospel of John, is being fined thousands of pounds for doing that. And that's because he's been accused of intentionally influencing a protected person and not immediately leaving the area when asked to do so by police. So, you know, maybe he has broken the law, but actually the fact that that's a law in the first place to me seems ridiculous. And the other thing about this, at the more sort of, I think, immediate level, taking a step away from the spiritual aspect of prayer, I think a lot of people in this country who are not religious, they view things like praying outside of abortion clinics as being something like a bit of an American import, a kind of performative thing. And I've seen people make this criticism before. I've seen people say, well, you know, most ordinary people, when they see someone praying outside of an abortion clinic, they see someone who's trying to make a show of, you know, standing against this issue. Is that the case? It probably is sometimes. But actually, to me, the more interesting thing, as I said already, is the fact that the agents of the state and the laws that we are governed by do actually seem to recognise the significance of prayer. Which, again, is just quite an interesting thing to me.
What do you think, Maria?
Well, I guess what's the question? Because for me, it's they either don't want us praying because they believe it's powerful, and that scares people who don't understand it.
Yes.
But also, if they think it's performative, it comes to like why, as a Christian in politics, it's like people assume we're performative and have faith just for political reasons. It's very similar. If someone stood outside an abortion, it's like, oh, you're using your faith as a tool to morally bash me. Where actually, most people, Christians I know, who have that point of view and want to pray for the people who might seek an abortion, it's because they genuinely care.
Yes.
Not just about the potential loss of life, but the person who's going through the.
That is a really important point, Maria. I think because I've had the accusation that my faith is, you know, I wear it like a costume or something, and that it's just a kind of, it's an aesthetic thing, and it's not a kind of personal principle, something that I'm actually committed to. And I think that reveals a lot about the people who say that, because they, you know, I think from their perspective, they can't, you know, the atheist types who will accuse you of just wearing faith like a costume. They can't actually wrap their head around the fact that you do actually have deeply held, you know, metaphysical beliefs about the nature of the universe. And I think with that, we can segue into why we feel the right in Britain does need to have an explicitly Christian flavour to it. Because there is a huge amount of debate on this topic at the moment, with some people saying, you know, Christianity is not popular. It's a minority religion in this country. 46.2% of people at the last census self-identified as Christians. That's, you know, less than half. And actually, it's going to put people off. You know, it's going to put people off of voting for the right, because most people are not interested in that, you know, hokey-cokey sort of religious nonsense. And I would like us to address this because, as I said in the opening, one of our missions from the beginning of Restore Britain has been to restore traditional Christian values to this country. And I would open up by saying quite simply that Christianity, Christian faith, is inseparable from British and earlier English, Scottish, Welsh and Irish identities. These kingdoms, and that's what they are, England, Wales, Scotland and Ireland, were kingdoms before they were part of the United Kingdom. These kingdoms were founded on Christianity. Like they are, and Christian faith and that conception of the cosmos is inseparable from who we are as a people. And this is my issue with those people who think that all that matters is demographics, for example. Obviously, demographics do matter, and actually, it would be desirable for England, for example, to be majority ethnically English, in my view, right? But that cannot that's not the only ingredient, right? Because there has to also be that metaphysical aspect that accompanies the physical aspect, and that is a conception of the universe along Christian lines, a conception of morality along Christian lines, a conception of truth along Christian lines. And in the absence of that, I think we will just, basically, if you think things are bad now, an entirely secularized England, even if it was demographically, like strong from an English perspective, it's still not going to be the country of our ancestors, and it's not going to be somewhere good to live.
Well, just to jump in with that, we have to understand what our nation is or was. Even pre-Christianity, there was still the metaphysics there. Pre-Christianity being obviously paganism, that's still metaphysical. So throughout our history as a nation, it's always been to a divine aspect. From obviously, like I said, pre-Christian, but then after Christianity became the religion of the nation, it invoked and built hospitals, schools, education, Magna Carta, all of these things, law and order, all divinely inspired from, of course, the book. The thing that we have to understand is if you remove that, which is what the New Atheist movement was pretty much pushing in the sort of late 90s plus the 2001 with 9/11 after that, and that's when it all ramped up. If you remove that, you have a vacuum, and that's what happens now with states.
Yes.
And what happens when you create a vacuum is something bigger, more powerful comes in and takes that spot, whether that be Islam, whether that be materialism, atheism. That's still metaphysical in its own nature. Even atheism, really, you could argue, is metaphysical because it's idol worship.
It's a rejection of the metaphysical.
You have to have more faith to be an atheist.
True.
It's true. It is true. It is true. And so that shows that it is all metaphysical in that aspect, and you're just filling a vacuum.
Yeah. That's totally right. And the religion of modernity, because people are still religious, but the God that they worship is not the creator of the universe. Because this is what I find interesting in Christianity. You have this phrase, the Lord our God. And I think about this a lot because if you unpack that phrase, it's very interesting. Because what you're saying is that God is a category which in the Christian conception is occupied by the Lord, which is to say the creator of the universe and the source of all things, the reason that we're all here. And so what we worship as our God, as our moral center of gravity, is the creator of the universe, which is the correct orientation from our perspective. But that category of God, what an individual's God is, what an individual's moral center of gravity, highest good is, today is occupied, in my view, by the self, by the individual, right?
Materialism.
And this is the point. Is I believe that the reason that the right has been losing for decades in this country and abroad is because both the left and the right both fundamentally agree on this point. They believe that the individual should be the moral center of gravity of our societies. They think that prioritizing individual liberty and autonomy is the point of civilization, and right?
Our whole nation was founded on God the creator. It made us creative because we're creative beings. And so that belief and that, like you say, divinely inspired, I think is what has led us to do the medical and the technological advances.
You could even
all comes from that.
You could even use the the argument of architecture and how it reflects society.
Yes.
You know, when you look at brutalism, whether it be the Soviet Union, very atheistic, the only, or one of the only, I believe, atheist states to ever exist, I believe. Brutalism was birthed out of that. And now what do you see when the absence of, or the turning the back of the the religion of the state that it's always been.
I really like the people. So there's a lot of people on the right who say, well, I don't have faith myself, but I want Christian values back in the country. And I think that comes from a place, and I understand it, of they love to sit in churches. A lot of people I know don't have faith, but they love to sit in a church because it's been created in a heart of worship to honour the Creator. And whether they have faith or not, they understand the beauty in that and the good. And so as much as I would love everyone to come to faith, even if they've got that basic understanding that having faith in a creator God who loves us, who we serve and act as, and serve each other, that is kind of a really strong foundation for any nation.
To touch on that as well, there's obviously the new, I guess you could call it new or very popularized word of I'm culturally Christian.
Yes.
Like you said, I'm not religious, but I respect the Christian notion, the Christian values that it brings and what it has brought to Britain and Europe, America, Canada, etc., the Western Hemisphere. And I think that is encouraging. I think it's incredibly encouraging because it shows that there is absolutely, and it shows respect for what was built for everyone, for here. And so I think it is encouraging that it is moving in that kind of direction. I think it shows that the craze of the new atheist movement is essentially falling flat.
Yes.
You know, the tipping of the fedora hat back in the early internet days, that's over now.
Yeah, and I think you're so right, because I think that it's largely in reaction to the introduction of new religions into our society, like Islam, for example. That's one of them, and also, as you say, this kind of materialism, this kind of self-centered, religion that a lot of people seem to subscribe to. And on that point, I mean, as I was saying, I think the reason that the right has lost for so long is because the left has been maximalist in their pursuit of the religion of the self, which obviously reaches its zenith with woke ideology, where you can have, a million different genders and choose your own pronouns and be completely self-made, which is about as atheistic, which is to say, without a belief in a creator, as you can get. Woke is absolutely it's the peak of self-worship. But nevertheless, the right has also been guilty of this, and the right's answer to the religion of the self has not been, break down all barriers, destroy all, in a Rousseauian kind of way, destroy all things that confer any duty or constraint upon the individual. The right's answer has been, well, just make your fortune, make as much money as possible, buy as much stuff as possible. It's capitalism. Accumulate as much material stuff as possible. And for some people, that works. For some
keeping
people,
up with the Joneses, isn't it? It's like, well, it's the newer car, the bigger house. So people realise that. So throughout my 20s, I didn't have faith. I grew up in church, but throughout my 20s, I started meditating, and I was doing the putting myself first and doing things for me, and because I deserved it. Breath work. All of
I think we all did that.
But it's that it's almost like I think throughout our whole lives as a Christian, it is a journey of faith, and you grow and learn, and he stretches you. It's not always comfortable, but the longer you're on this earth, I think the more and more people are realising that a new car's not going to solve that
and this is the other thing, just very quickly on that point, is that philosophy of the self that manifested in a kind of right-wing way with the endless accumulation of wealth and stuff and so on. That worked when the getting was good, right? That worked when we were an economically prosperous society, but we're not anymore. And so that doesn't really work anymore, because a lot of young people are looking at that offering, listening to people saying, you will find meaning in your life by just making as much money as possible and by pursuing a glittering career and all of this kind of thing. It's like, that's not an option for a lot of people now. It's not an option. Like young men especially, I think.
Am I correct in saying that us three were atheists at one point?
Absolutely.
And that we were not brought up Christian?
Yeah.
Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, so I went
That's interesting.
church. I attended occasionally, and then I decided I did the Alpha course. I don't know if you've been to church in England or what. But I did the Alpha course as a teenager, so I understood the biblical story.
Right.
Born of a virgin, died, rose again
Yeah.
for me, that I understood. But when I was 20, I think I was 19, 20, I said, I don't want to give you credit, God. I want the glory.
Yeah.
I did this hard work.
Yeah.
I got this job because I'm great.
It's the self again.
And it was all the self, and I lived like that for... So there was an acknowledgement that God probably existed, but I don't know, so...
Yeah. Oh, well...
I'll just live what I think's best.
If we're to share...
Yeah, let's do it.
So I was an ex-communist, so I believed in material mostly, and it was growing up. It was very secular. It was very much parents would give you the knife and fork and say, "Pick it up your own way." So it was very much like that. And until I was 28, so I'm 31 now, just in case, just in case people were wondering. At 28, never thought anything to do with religion. I thought it was a way to just control people, control societies. It was
of the masses.
Yes, it was a way in which to keep people in line, and that the book was a manuscript essentially, and not like a divinely inspired narrative which had layers.
Yeah.
Never met Christians in my entire life, believe it or not. I think I knew one guy that was a Christian in school, and we all mocked him. And it still haunts me sometimes today. I think about it and I feel really, really terrible.
That is the lot of Christians, though. I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah. And so I think at 28, strangely, mine was a religious experience. And I always used to say with religious experiences, no, you're just being pushed into a very, very traumatic period of your life. And it's something that... you have a rational reaction to,
it's like
and
just a physiological
it's just
response.
a physiological response.
Yeah.
It's all biology, and it's all something that can be rationally explained. But then, as soon as I went through this particular scenario, I then sat and questioned and asked people, including atheists, I don't understand what's happened, and they all said, I don't know, and so that led me to question for the first time, well, why am I an atheist? Why is this absence of belief in my life? And then after that, through reason, through reading, C.S. Lewis as well is a big influence, reading the metaphysical side of it and the apologetic side, I realised, hang on a minute, there could be something more. And now I understand the history, especially with this country, of Christianity and what it's brought to not just this nation, but across the Western Hemisphere and beyond.
Yeah, no, and for my part, I see it's interesting because I have almost the opposite experience to you, Lewis, which is that I arrived at faith through reason. Which is, I think that's kind of, in the minds of a lot of people, that's a contradictory thing because they think that reason and faith are at odds with one another.
Sure.
But that's absolutely not the case. They are complementary and they lean against each other. And if you lose one, you lose the other. There's a great Rudyard Kipling poem where he says that, when the women have no more children and the men lose reason and faith, the gods of the copybook headings will return and with the wages of sin are death, or something like that. Not word for word. But that always sticks with me because the two fall together. And so it was actually during COVID that I started coming to faith. And I was just thinking about the facts like, just the basic question of why does any of this exist? What is this that we are in? What am I? And why does it seem that just as the physical world is governed by a set of unchanging principles, it also seems like the realm of morality and beauty and the metaphysical, essentially, is also governed by the same set of unchanging rules. And then the question is, well, what are those rules? Why are they consistent throughout history? And where do they come from? And I think when you sort of think on those questions for long enough, you cannot help but come to the conclusion that, well, the answer is we were created, there is a creator, and that is the source. And it took me a while to actually come to Christianity itself, because I tended to, for a while I was in that kind of Nietzschean mindset where I was like, Christianity is a slave morality, it's a religion of slaves.
That's what I
sort of
thought.
Thing. It's a tempting kind of path to go down because it is, again, with that religion of the self in mind, it is a very self-centered, sort of egotistical view, I think.
Christianity is so the opposite, isn't it? So like the first will be last.
You think of others, not the self.
Yeah. And this is the point: is you do eventually realise that actually there is no more demanding lifestyle that you could pick. Other than outside of Christianity.
It's like putting life on hard mode, to be fair. But you don't choose that.
Yeah, it's a narrow path, that's for sure. But yeah, and then I think inevitably you start to stray into the realm of the religious when you start thinking about these questions. But to the people who are listening who are not religious, a lot of this is going to sound like just baloney. A lot of it is going to sound like nonsense, and it's difficult to grapple with that, because I understand it. Because for most of my life, I was an atheist. I thought that religion was for stupid people, and I thought that essentially, Lewis, like you said, it's a mechanism of control. You know, it's there to, as you
just
say,
keep people in line.
Yeah, and sort of control what people do and what people think and so on. And that's absolutely not the case, because if anything, there is nothing more liberating than embracing faith, because it helps you to understand what it is we're all a part of. Because that feeling of being just lost is I think it's so pervasive nowadays, and so many, I think, especially young people, do feel that sense of it's deracination, but it's deeper than that. It's like a sense of being spiritually unmoored and not even understanding that there is such a thing as the realm of the spiritual and the realm of the non-physical reality that's just as real as physical reality. These ideas they sound very out there to a lot of people nowadays. But in my view, in answer to this question about why the right needs to embrace Christianity, whether it should, I think it absolutely does, because we can't just return back to trying to do the religion of the self thing, but in a kind of half measure way, because we're going to continue to lose to the left, who go all the way with that thinking. We need to be thinking in a frame of what we are part of is not just about the individual. What we are part of is it's a grand narrative that we're blessed to be part of. Like Christian faith gives you an understanding of the structure of the universe, and without that, I don't think that we're going to save our society.
Foundation.
Yeah.
Then if you have faith, you'll understand the sentence and the concept of build on the rock.
Yes.
And the rock is Jesus. And I think once you've got that concept, as a Christian, it's very hard to not want to build the structure of the nation, the structure of your home, the structure of how you operate throughout your life. If you build it on that firm foundation, as much as the path's narrow and it's on hard mode, there's just a solidness to it.
Yes.
And I think even if you are culturally Christian, appreciating that we all have the same foundation and agreeing that foundation makes us all stronger.
Yes.
Whether you have faith in it and spirit-led, or whether you simply understand this is our foundation we're building on because this is a good one. Because
it's true and like fundamental. And this is the thing with like the very concept of religion as being something, like a series of different things that you could take off a shelf. Like, I want that religion, you're going to have that religion, and we're all going to have a different religion, and they're all equally valid. I think it's quite subversive as well, because the Christian perspective is like, actually, no, all other religions are wrong. Like they have an incorrect conception of the cosmos and of morality. Ours is the one that is correct, and therefore there's no sort of, Christianity is not, it's not like just useful. And this is another thing that I think we need to be conscious of. It's not just worth embracing because it's useful and because the values are kind of nice. It's because it is there is truth and there is untruth, and it's a binary.
Yeah.
And we need to be on the side of truth. And anything less than that is going to fail. And this is my issue with the secular right is, it's also here and now, like the policies and ideas that are pushed. It's also immediate and self-centered, as I said before. And I think if we want to have a future for our country, for our nation, for our kingdom, we have to be getting back to these absolute foundational questions about why it is we're here, what it is we're trying to do, why England specifically has been good. Because in my view, England's not worth preserving just because it's mine and just because it's ours and just because I want my children and grandchildren to grow up in a good country. It's worth preserving because England is unique among nations as a defender of faith and reason and truth throughout history. Like England, in my view, is it's like the peak of human civilization, and that is directly correlated with the fact that we have embraced Christianity in a way that very few other nations have.
Yeah. I think it's important to say as well that it does transcend politics too, because we get caught up in the worldliness. It's ironic, isn't it? Because we're sitting on a podcast and we're talking about worldliness. We're talking about how we must reject culture as it's taught. There's an irony there, of course, and I'm very, very aware of that. But we have to remember it does transcend the politics, because it is the politics, if that makes sense.
So with all that said, I'd like us to address some of the arguments that are made against, the right explicitly embracing Christianity, because this is a discourse that's ongoing at the moment. A lot of people have been very resistant to myself when I have expressed Christian ideas and made the case that the British right does need to be Christian. And I think these arguments are worth addressing because they are quite compelling. Chief among them, in my view, is the fact that a minority of the British public self-identify as Christian, 46.2% in 2021. And so in a democratic society, it's quite compelling to say, well, if a minority of people think in this way and believe these things, why should these ideas be governing our society?
Yeah.
And how do you two respond to that?
My first point would be, I think it's probably more. We alluded to this in another conversation, but I think there is a growth, especially during COVID, like you said, people started searching for meaning and more because there was a threat to life and they were all trapped and isolated.
Well, for me, it was just the virtue of being trapped in a house by myself for ages and just doing lots of thinking.
Like I look at my son, so he was baptised this year, his own choice, and I look at his generation, I look at, the 20-year-olds now, they're very different to the generation I was. I'm 35, and so I grew up in a generation where kind of binge drinking and the self, where I see the 20-year-olds now and they're kind of rejecting the material. Well, they're going one way or the other. There is a split. I think there's a kind of, you're either going woke or you're searching for deeper meaning.
Yes. Well, I think that is
revival in a sense. I see.
It's very true.
A lot of full churches that I didn't before.
Yeah, it's very true.
Not Church of England, but
yes, indeed. No, that is very true, and again, I think that is largely because the getting ain't so good anymore. And people are looking at the future, especially in this country. They're looking at their wages. They're looking at the fact they can't get a job. They're looking at the tax that they're having to pay when they do get a job. They're looking at the price of housing and the difficulty that lies before them with regards to building a household, building a family, and so on, and sort of giving their children a good country to grow up in.
It's looking quite dark.
It's looking bleak.
And pessimistic.
It's looking bleak.
And so people are looking for light.
Yeah.
And with faith, that the light's found in it.
This might be controversial. I understand why people say it's not for me. I understand why people turn around and say, why should I? Because I see a minority as opposed to the majority. Yeah. When understanding human nature, the thing worse than death that humans hate is ostracization. Yeah. That's a big thing. Yeah. They hate that worse than death. I say they as if we're not human. But we all, as ostracization, that's one of the worst things someone can go through. And nobody likes feeling like that. Nobody likes feeling left out. Also, we naturally rebel. Obviously, the book talks about this as well. We're naturally rebellious, whether it be manifested within, back-chatting our parents to authorities outside of the household. Yeah. That's very important to understand as well. And also convenience. I think us as humans like convenience. We don't like uncomfortableness, especially being British. We don't enjoy that. We don't enjoy being uncomfortable. We've lived through uncomfortable times. There was a period during, I believe, the Victorian era where the whole nation was stricken by alcoholism so much that babies were being left in the street to die. And what brought that entire nation back wasn't actually politics. It was actually going back to the metaphysical. It was getting back in the churches. And that has been recorded and being a time of what was called in Protestantism as the golden era of Christianity. And to understand that and to understand human nature, I do understand the sense. We've spoken to people in our sphere, political sphere, who don't believe in that, but is very receptive to the Christian argument, but say, I just feel no need to be metaphysical. I don't feel the need to worship. I don't feel the need to do that. But there are people who are culturally Christian, who label themselves as that want to do that for their children. They want to do that for their friends, their family members, but not for themselves. Yes. Yeah. I understand that. Even as a Christian, I do understand that. And I understand that the parameter in which we live in, what is governing our society at the moment, not necessarily just the Labour government in general, but
deeper than that.
It's way deeper than that.
Yeah, it's like the moral paradigm that we live in.
The moral paradigm that we live in, exactly, which affects culture, which affects morality, which affects how people behave, what is acceptable, what isn't. And I think when you understand that, I think you can also understand the reason for rejection, because people just want to get on and just live and try and live as comfortably as possible during dark times.
Yes.
Now, what I would argue is until you find the comfort of faith, you then realize that there is something beyond you. There is something beyond this particular plane, if you like, and that it provides you with such a comfort that can get you through anything. The closest I've been to reverting to atheism is not going to church for a month. And when I've done that, I have felt myself slipping back into the old atheistic ways of chasing materialism, going through the deadly sins, I guess, again. And we all have our own vices. Nobody of us are Puritans in a sense of we are all sinners and we all struggle. It's not like you become a Christian and you're suddenly higher than everyone else. That's not how
quite
it works.
the opposite.
It is quite. I feel like wretched. You know, when you're heightened to this idea of or understanding the wrongness of what you've done, whether it be in the past or knowing that you could do in the future, and there's nothing you can do about it. You know that sin is around the corner. When you understand that and the heightened perception of it, you can really, you think, right, well, you need a bedrock to really lean on and to get you through
it is
the
a
bad
red
times.
pill. It's a red pill. Seriously, and I'm not using that in a mean way. Like the actual analogy of the red pill in the Matrix. There's no going back. Like it's a one-way journey. And once you, as you say, once you become aware of this aspect of reality, to then try and revert, I mean, you're just going to feel terrible.
As a Christian, when you go through things as a Christian, it's very different going through things as a non-Christian. So when you're at your weakest, you have nothing to fall back on. When you have faith, that the Bible verses say it, when you're weakest, you find strength that you can't explain. A willingness to go on and a determination that it doesn't feel like it's even you, because old you would have given up, where new you, born again you, is like, all right, God, let's go again. And it gives you a strength that you can't explain.
To understand as well, the argument against that would be, well, I've got a good friend network, I've got a close family, I've got this, I've got that I can lean on with my troubles. But we understand that humans in general, or every single human, is fallible. You know, every single one, even the ones that we love as closest, we are all just not perfect. We all make mistakes, and there will be mistakes.
And something you said there, Lewis, that I wanted to pick up on was the fact that human beings don't like discomfort. The British in particular don't like discomfort. But actually, when you have faith, it becomes the case that you have to embrace physical discomfort, because you have to, again, there's no more demanding lifestyle than that of the Christian, because you are called to limitless self-control and self-mastery, which is extremely difficult. But that comes with its own form of comfort. And so it's as though when you experience this physical discomfort, you find a spiritual comfort. And the same is also true in the inverse, is that when you're physically comfortable, you spiritually tend to degrade, I think. And that's where we are as a nation. I think that Britain has been comfortable for a long time, and that's made us complacent, and it's made us spiritually empty.
Well, discomfort, that's how you gain character. And ultimately, as a nation, whether we like it or not, it's going to get uncomfortable. It is uncomfortable. It's only going to get more uncomfortable as far as I can see. And actually, as much as it is hard mode being a Christian, that the fact that you believe in something bigger than yourself and it's out of you and it's not from your own strength gives you, well, it kind of gives you a superpower of, well, what will be. It's very, not many, I don't know anyone who doesn't have faith or is an atheist that can be so, I don't want to say blasé about it, but be like, if God wills it kind of attitude. It's quite a strong part of having any faith.
There are also no saviours on this earth.
Yes, true. And that's another really important point, by the way. You said about Victorian England not finding salvation in politics, but instead in finding it in a return to faith. And that is so crucial for our predicament as a nation now, because I think a lot of people
We've been through worse.
We've been through worse, but nevertheless, a lot of people are seeking salvation through politics. They think that if we could just, and this is my issue. You know, we talked about elite theory yesterday.
Yes.
I'm a big believer in elite theory. I think that it is an accurate description of how power and politics works. But I do also think that mindset where, you know, everything is downstream from the state, everything is downstream from decisions of elites, and individuals have no agency. I do think that's a bit pervasive, because it's giving people the sense that if we were just in power, and if the current elite were to be, you know, cycled out and new ones were to come in, then everything would be fixed. That's just not true.
It's all about pointing the finger.
Blame, you blame everyone else. Where Christian faith gets you to look inwards about your own accountability.
Yes.
How you in your community, your family can make a difference and serve.
And this is something else that I have said recently that has been met with a huge amount of hostility, which is that there is a tendency on the right at the moment to always blame the other. There's never a desire to look inwards. There's never a desire to look in the mirror. And this, I think, is the great failing of England in the 21st century, is we are not introspective, and we are always keen to blame people other than ourselves for the condition of England. Whereas my perspective is the condition of England is such purely and solely because of the English. It's decisions that we've made as a people that have led us to where we are today. So the idea that, for example, mass immigration is somehow something that's been inflicted on us and that we're blameless victims in that, in my view, is just not true. The conditions that gave rise to mass immigration were entirely of our own making, and there's a lot of different factors in that. But the idea that we're going to fix all of our problems by, you know, deporting X number of people and cycling out the elites and all this sort of thing misunderstands where we are, I think, because those things are symptoms of a deeper problem. They are symptoms of I think just a spiritual malaise that our country has been in, certainly since the 60s, and that which was when this moral paradigm that we live in was born, in my view. And until we're prepared to grapple with that, I don't think that we're going to save this country. And that is my answer as to why the right needs to embrace Christianity, is because, you know, basically we're not going to understand why we are where we are without it.
Yeah.
I didn't know what to say on that.
Yeah. Another aspect of this, by the way, in my view, and this is something that I don't see many people talking in these terms, and these ideas were ones I've come to quite recently, primarily through the work of Scott Hahn, who's an American Catholic writer, very interesting guy. In one of his books, he talks about one of the aspects of the biblical narrative, essentially describing the structure of human civilizations through the covenants that God makes with mankind. It begins in Genesis with Adam, and the covenant is marriage, and that forms the foundation of society. You notice, by the way, it's not the individual. The individual is not the foundation of civilization in the biblical conception. It is marriage that is the foundation of civilization. Marriage, in turn, is the foundation of the household, which is established with Noah. And the household is not just the family. It is specifically mother and father married with children, dependents, and property. That is the biblical conception of the household. And that, historically in this country, has been considered the fundamental economic unit of society. Again, not the individual, the household, right? And the economic system that we live in now makes it very, very difficult for people to own their own property, because they're always beholden to someone, whether it's a landlord or a bank. You know, and so it's very difficult to build a household. It's interesting the way in which the system is oriented against the building of a real household. The household, in turn, is the foundation of the tribe, which is established with Abraham. And what a tribe is a series of households who are united by lineage, by language, and by religion. The tribe, in turn, gives rise to the nation, which is established with Moses. And what that is a series of tribes united in one land under one law. And finally, you have the kingdom, which is established with David, which is multiple nations united under one king. And finally, with Jesus, you have the church, which is what gives moral instruction to all of those structures. It makes all of those structures make sense, right? And that, to me, is a pretty compelling description of the nature of human civilizations. And this is another reason that I think the right needs to embrace Christianity, is to actually understand what it is we're part of and what it is we're fighting for. Because it's not good enough to just say the individual. And I think this is where the right goes wrong, is we're not prepared to talk about marriage. We're not prepared to talk about the tribe. We're not prepared to talk about the kingdom. We talk about our country as if it's just a democracy or just an economy or something
Values.
like that. It's not true. It's not true. And the idea that the nation is something that you can buy into if you just sing Rule Britannia and believe in, tolerance and diversity and all that sort of thing. It's not true. And I think all the while we're not prepared to grapple with these realities, the right is just going to continue to lose. Because again, we're meeting the left, we're meeting the atheists on their own terms. Yeah. And they're prepared to take those terms to their logical conclusion where we're not. And that I think is also essential. But again, these are not popular ideas. Yeah. But another thing that faith gives you is a conception of the fact that what is true and what is popular are rarely the same thing. Yeah.
I was going to say the popular distinction, to understand that just because something is popular doesn't always mean that it's true, but also to understand that it is deeply unpopular. Like, I'm not to push back, like what you're saying is incredibly unpopular.
Yeah, it is. It is. I know.
I have seen the reactions. I've seen the reactions, but. Yes, unfortunately, I say unfortunately, because of the state that we're in, that is true. And there are elements now in which people need to essentially pick up their cross and start to see the reality of things. And it is concerning. It is very concerning.
And this is the question, back to the political point as to whether the right needs to embrace Christianity. I do think this is important because we live in a system whose currency is popularity. We live in a democracy. So the currency is not... the currency is not truth. The currency is popularity.
And to go bankrupt is ostracization.
Yes, yes. And so how do you sell this to the electorate if that's what we're trying to do here? And this is something I'm thinking about a lot because, do you speak in explicitly Christian terms? Do you talk about God and about Jesus and all of this sort of thing? And at one level, it says in the Bible pretty explicitly, yes, that is what you're supposed to do. But at another, it's, we are in this situation where, well, what is the goal here? The goal here is to save our country and to deliver it from its current malaise. Yeah. In a system that is based purely on popularity, are you going to achieve that by talking in explicitly religious terms? I don't know. And that's what a lot of people are pushing back on, I think, is I think they're saying you're never going to sell this to the vast mass of people.
I don't think you have to sell it, is my point. I think, if you've got a good product, it sells itself. And having faith, I would say I have faith that this is the truth and that people will see the truth. I have quite a lot of hope at the moment because I do see like a resurgence and a revival kind of buzz. I don't know if you two feel
very much so.
Well.
Very much so.
Yeah. So I don't think we need to sell it. I just think we need to be honest and open. Yes,
and
I
live
have
it
faith
as well.
And live it ourselves. So try and live holy lives. We will fall short, we all do, but that kind of that falling short actually is quite good to humbles you and it keeps you grounded and keeps us relatable. So as long as we're being honest about, I'm a Christian, I've got married, I'm going to have my children, I'm going to keep if every one of us who has faith, 46% of this country could all say, I'm going to be accountable for my spiritual welfare, my life, my responsibility, my home, and try and live by the clear rules that are quite black and white, look after my spouse, care for each other, care about my society, serve my society, have as many children as we kind of can.
As we're given.
That kind of mentality on an individual level, not in a my selfish self or me way, but in a I'm going to do my part for God. Which is to live a holy life as best I can. If that our country can get back to that foundation, I think we'll naturally just see it spread and change.
And this is the thing with faith, just very quickly. Like faith, in my view, and this is a Catholic view because I'm a Catholic, it's not just purely about accepting Jesus Christ as the Messiah. It is also about making every decision in your life, because our lives are basically just a series of decisions. We're born, we grow up, and we die, and in between that there's just a series of decisions. Making those decisions on the base along the lines of those principles laid out by Christ and in the Bible, that is what faith actually is. And having the knowledge that if you do that, if you make your decisions in accordance with those principles, things will turn out well. Maybe not immediately, but in the long run and from a spiritual perspective, you'll be all right. And that's the thing. If, like you say, if that 46% were making every decision in their life along the lines of Christian principles.
I think they were surrendering their will to God.
Exactly.
And living what God deems, rather than I want to do this because it feels good now, but actually, conversation with Jesus, what's the right thing to do? What should I say? How should I act in this? And having that almost, because what I find really interesting, the amount of therapists are going up and up and up. Yet mental health is getting worse and worse and worse. Like, this is the proof that secularism and talking to another human is not, it's not going to solve our problems. And having a faith in something higher being and having that conversation and having a book which you've got multiple versions of, and I like the NIV. You'll have probably slightly different King James.
Gary Reams.
Get them all would be my, But to have that kind of physical book is important, and to have a conversation with your creator. I'm kind of Pentecostal in a way, so for me it's about spirituality in terms of I trust the Spirit to convict me, because I lived in a lot of shame. When I first came to faith, it was guilt, it was shame, I felt terrible. But that was a process you go through, and actually
it's cleansing.
Nobody teaches you that as well. No. You're not prepared for that. No. It's really weird.
Yeah. But the devil will say, well, here's shame and guilt, rather than it's not the Holy Spirit convicting you of a set thing. Like, I want you to kind of try and not drink as much. It's kind of a conversation you have with God, or the Holy Spirit will enable you to do it. Where I think people think, oh, I have to repent. Oh, I feel really shame, guilt. Oh, it's awful. Yeah. And they're going to feel really bad and full of fear. Yeah. No, faith is
that's cleansing,
opposite.
Though.
There's a process to go through, but ultimately, if you stay in that place of shame and guilt, well, I might as well just have another drink then.
Yes. I might
as well. Oh, well, it's their fault. And the uncomfortableness of that can actually make you regress rather than step out in faith in a positive. I can do this because God's given me the willpower to do it. Rather than.
What do we make of this argument that we shouldn't mix religion and politics?
I disagree.
Why?
Well, I just think those that say, oh, I'm a Christian, but I don't think we should be involved in politics. How can you have faith in something? And it's like, how can you not share your faith with someone? If you truly believe it gives you salvation and it gives you comfort and it gives you peace, why would you not share that with someone you love? Why would you not want that for others? And so if you have faith, I struggle to understand why you wouldn't let that invade every aspect of your life.
Yes. Yes.
I think when we talk about, who is it? Was it Breitbart, Andrew Breitbart, who said culture is downstream? Or is it politics is downstream from culture? Is that
yes.
That's correct, isn't it? Is his quote? I think the same could be said about faith and religion. I think the downstream of when you're talking about a society and what you believe culturally and socially is acceptable is not the same as law. So, for example, a lot of the times when people say politics and Christianity, you think law, you think legislation, passing things, repealing things, when actually it's about society's brain and how it thinks and how it works.
Conduct as well.
Conduct, exactly. When you change conduct and when you change the social contract, and that's on the ground, not in politics, it's actually on the ground socially. And that's why we're seeing a resurgence in Gen Z, for example, going to church. People are searching for the more traditional aspects of Christianity. People are searching for something more metaphysical. It's a change in the social contract. So talking about mixing politics and religion, I wouldn't say a red herring, but it's the social contract is the main aspect of changing behaviour, not in a sinister way, not in a government,
not in a nudge unit,
not in a nudge unit way, BIT, something that behaviour insights team. I had to really think then, but something in a way that's more palatable, not changing but palatable, and a way in which people have their attitude changed. And their morality just held under a microscope or held with a bit more sort of conviction.
Yeah. Well, I think this is so important because that conviction point. It's like, why are we doing any of this? Like, why? What is the point of the political, endeavors and struggles that we are a part of? Well, it's not because it's not just like arbitrary. We're doing it because we believe in something. And really, I think everybody has a gap in themselves for religion, and the question is not whether you are going to be religious, it's what your religion is going to be. And from the Augustinian perspective, which I'm very partial to, it's either going to be the Lord, the creator of the universe, or yourself. It's going to be one or the other. And I think a lot of people are driven in politics by their worship of themselves. I think the majority of our politicians and the people who govern our society are absolutely just in it for themselves.
Of course.
That's something that everybody agrees on, basically. Yeah. Everybody agrees on the fact that these people that seem to run our society, whether they're public-facing or otherwise, seem to just be in it for themselves.
It underpins pride, and I know the right way, so therefore X, Y, and Z, and everyone else needs to adopt.
And that is itself a kind of religious thing, because they have this... this kind of worship of the self. Yeah, they make an idol of themselves. And so
or power.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, which is almost like
is metaphysical.
Yeah, and but it is a stand-in for the self in a way, because it's for self-centered kind of ends.
Or it could be a different faith.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
In terms of Christianity and whether it should be involved in politics or not, I know it's my reason for being in politics, and I can't imagine having the motivation or the backbone to stick to a thing when it's unpopular, or to keep going when it gets tough, or you face a lot of rejection and a lot of potential abuse. I don't know how you could get involved in politics without having
that grounding.
A purpose, a grounding reason, and a feeling like it's the path you're meant to be on.
I think we already answered the question. I think we said... it is down to yourself, the individuals. You mentioned about is it 43, 46% Christians now?
Yes, 46.2%.
46.2%. If the 46.2% lived out Christian morality as they identify as...
Went to a church, regardless of which.
And acted as a Christian... out in their social lives as well, which is difficult because of the culture of this nation,
and it's unpopular.
And it's very unpopular. I know, but if that 46% acted as that way, I think you'll see a monumental shift.
Agreed.
Without politics.
Yes, I agree. Well, I think we'll leave it there. It's been really enjoyable. Really enjoyed talking about this, and I think it's encouraging to see how many more people are starting to have conversations about the importance of Christian faith in the United Kingdom. Because, as I said at the beginning, I think that our identity as a people is inseparable from our Christian faith. And if we try to separate it, I think this nation is going to burn, basically. And
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Right. Yeah.
Forgot that
bit. What a cheery Christmas episode. No, well, thank you very much for joining us, folks, and I hope you enjoyed the episode. And have a very Merry Christmas, and we will see you next year.